Let me take you back to 1978, when the Atari 2600 was dominating the video game market. Now, why is that though? Maybe it was the large variety of games available, or maybe the fact that it could do more than just this. I don't know, but for whatever reason, the Atari 2600 caught on like wildfire. Now, put yourself in Magnavox's position. All they had was a bunch of Pong units out. Meanwhile, you got all these 2600s flying off the shelves, so what did they do? Well, they teamed up with Philips and made the Odyssey 2. It seems like this was Magnavox's answer to Atari, and it actually did pretty well for the most part. It sold over 2 million units, which is like nothing compared to the Atari 2600, which sold over 30 million units. But in such an overcrowded market, it managed to hold its ground. It utilized detachable cartridges, just like the 2600 did. However, unlike the Atari, the controllers were hardwired into the console, along with the power cord and the video connector. I guess that's a pretty efficient way not to lose anything, but it just makes a big mess. And oftentimes, the wire is too short, making it almost impossible to play from your couch. But aside from that, it's an okay controller. It has an action button. Yeah, that's something different. Then you have your joystick. It works alright, though sometimes in the middle of the game, the joystick can get stuck in one of the slots. But other than that, it's fine. The Odyssey 2 also had a keyboard, which was mainly used for those early education games and selecting in-game options. It's a touch keyboard, which makes it pretty stiff, but usually it makes a noise when you press a key. But only when you're using the system though. The cartridges were pretty unique for the time. It has a handle on it, which makes it a lot easier to take out of the system. It's pretty efficient. The artwork on the boxes were always really cool. I mean, just look at that. That's friggin' awesome. I mean, there's so much detail that got put into this. It should have came with a poster for each game. That would be such a cool poster, just hanging up on my wall. That'd be cool. The games themselves were actually pretty good. I mean, there's not that much to say about them, but they're still pretty cool. Here's one called UFO. In this game, you play as an Earth Federation cruiser, and you're going around shooting at these UFOs, which look like X's that have lines going through them. It also kind of looks like people falling head first. I don't know. The gameplay is very similar to Asteroids. It's pretty much the same concept, except in Asteroids, you're shooting at asteroids. And in this game, you're shooting at UFOs. Your ship is armed with a laser and a force field that offers you some protection. Yeah, that's right. Die! Die! Oh, no! No! Crap. Despite its simplicity, it's a pretty fun and addicting game. It's definitely not as great as Asteroids, but it's still pretty good though. Alright, what's next? How about Alien Invaders Plus? Here you play as a spaceman who's landed on an alien planet. You have to fight off hordes of monsters that are native to that planet. It's alright, I guess. I mean, there's not that much to say. The monsters aren't too much of a threat, making this a very easy game. It's no doubt that this is a total ripoff of Space Invaders, except this is just a lot easier. But whatever. So I wouldn't really recommend this game. It's definitely no substitute for Space Invaders. Alright, next game. Let's check out Casey Munchkin. And oh my god. It's a total clone of Pac-Man. What the hell? All these games are just blatant copies of other ones. Damn robbers. But actually, Casey Munchkin is a really good game. It's probably my favorite game on the Odyssey 2, and in my opinion, is superior to Pac-Man. The ghosts don't have any pattern in this game, which means that you have to rely more on quick reflexes rather than trial and error. Also, the dots move. The higher your score is, the faster they go. The graphics are pretty funny, I like how whenever you eat a ghost, Casey Munchkin stops and smiles at you for a brief moment. Also, look how cool that cover is. Could you imagine if they came out with posters with these? It could have done Magnavox a lot better with business, but it is what it is. Overall, it's a better and more challenging version of Pac-Man. Check it out. Killer Bees. Yeah, Killer Bees the game. Finally, something original, and it's actually a lot of fun. You control a swarm of bees killing a bunch of robots which turn into A's after you defeat them. Like, I'm going around killing robots with bees. Only on the Odyssey 2. Those robots are probably thinking, oh no, no, not those bees again.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes! Eyes! Ah!
This game features the typical graphics and sound effects that you would expect to see in an Odyssey 2 game. It also happens to be one of the games that's compatible with the Odyssey 2 voice synthesizer, which was an add-on that made your games talk. It's similar to the IntelliVoice voice synthesis module, which was for the Intellivision. Sure, it's common nowadays for there to be voices in video games, but back then, it was unheard of. So, let's check out Killer Bees with the Odyssey 2 voice synthesis module, which is also known as the voice. Wait, what did it say? Now, I'm not making fun of it for its lack of voice clarity, because remember, this was a new thing at the time. My only guess is that it's trying to say, go. I mean, what else could it be saying? It also makes a noise whenever you kill the robots. It sounds like it's saying more. I mean, you get more points as it says more, so what else could it be trying to say? Then right after that, before you start again, it makes this mumbling sound, which I can't even make anything out of. I mean, all the imagination in the world could not identify what this thing is trying to say right here. So I'm kind of making fun of it right now, but remember, back in 1978, this stuff was fascinating. So overall, it's one of the best games on the Odyssey 2. It's right up there with KC Munchkin, and is definitely one of the most memorable games that ever came out on the console. Check it out. Next, we have Showdown in 2100 AD. Well, you're a cowboy in the year 2100 AD, and this is the ultimate showdown of the century, even though the century just started in this game. So, you just aim and shoot. Yeah, there's not much else to say. If your bullet hits a mushroom, it'll ricochet off of it and fly back in your direction. It's a lot of fun to play this game with friends. It's pretty neat. Speedway. Okay, I'm gonna be totally honest. This one is kinda mediocre. You play as a car trying to dodge all these crazy drivers, similar to the driving stage in Ghostbusters on NES, except much more tolerable. Your car gets faster as you go along. It's fun for about 2 minutes, but then it gets really old. The controls are really blocky, which won't help your attention span at all. Alright, Super Cobra. This is a port of an arcade game where you go around shooting at everything with a helicopter, and was a sequel to a game called Scramble. This game was ported onto several home consoles. Obviously, we're taking a look at the Odyssey 2 game. They did a pretty decent job vamping it down to put on this console. It doesn't scroll like it did in the arcade, but instead it just cuts to different locations when you get all the way to the right side of the screen, which looks a bit tacky, but the gameplay is fun and addicting. And that's what the highlight of this game is, the gameplay. It's amazingly addicting. Check it out. What next? How about Popeye? This game was ported onto just about every home console at the time. However, this one was only released in Europe. So the only way to play it is if you have access to one of the PAL Odyssey 2s, which is known in Europe as the Philips VideoPack G7000. Wow, that's a cool name. That's what I want to name my child. Anyways, so yeah, this is Popeye on the Odyssey 2. The Atari 2600 version blows this one out of the water for sure. The gameplay still holds strong to the addicting quality of the arcade game. I'm not going to criticize the graphics or anything, but the sound effects are kinda lame. There's no music. However, the Atari 2600 version had amazing music from the arcade that practically plays through the whole game. Then again, the 2600 had 2 sound channels, whereas the Odyssey 2, as far to my knowledge, only had 1, and used the same chip for both the audio and video function. But then again, the Odyssey 2 had the voice synthesis add-on, so I don't know, I could talk about this stuff all day. But overall, it's not the best version of Popeye, but it's still pretty good though. So if you have access to a PAL Odyssey 2, then this one may be worth a shot. Blockout Breakdown. I guess they didn't call it Breakout due to licensing issues. That's what it is. It's pretty fun for the most part. Just break all the blocks away and you win. Not much else to say. Overall, the Odyssey 2 was a pretty good system. It managed to stand its ground against the Atari 2600 up until the video game crash of 1983. However, the 2600 managed to survive that tragic time in history and went on until 1992. But the Odyssey 2 still lived on in people's hearts, or at least the people that knew what it was. Magnavox scheduled a release for the Odyssey 3, but never happened due to the video game crash, which forced Magnavox to go out of the console market and abandon their new system, which is sad because it actually looked like a pretty cool system. They even made a commercial for it, which is the only source of information that you can gather on what the system may have came out like. It had a real keyboard instead of a touch keyboard that the Odyssey 2 used, and also had nice trays to store your new detachable controllers.
Hand controls contoured to fit comfortably in the palm of the hand. Hand controls that store in convenient spaceports, out of the way, but never far away.
It was also fully compatible with your regular Odyssey 2 games. That's pretty cool. It's sad that this system never saw the light of day, because in my opinion, it probably could have stood a chance during the video game crash of 83 and 84, if it were to have been released just a few years earlier. I mean, its features were far ahead of its time. The high-resolution background graphics were said to have been comparable to early NES games. It was also supposed to function like a real computer, which was a popular thing back in the early 80s before PCs hit. There's a rumor floating around that the system was actually test marketed in the US and in parts of Europe, but I can't find any hard evidence of this being true. It's only popped up on eBay one time in November of 2011 from a private Magnavox collector. I remember seeing that auction when it was still active. The seller was asking for over $3,000. It ended up only getting one bid. I remember getting real pissed off, because, like, where am I ever gonna find one of those again? I couldn't believe it, but, oh well. It'll just be an interesting piece of gaming history now.